Well, good evening and welcome back to Wednesday Night Live, coming to you from from Pocatello, Idaho, in the beautiful Portneuf Valley in southeast Idaho, gateway to the great Northwest. If I sound a little raspy tonight, it's because, as is the case with many of you, I'm sure, I am really getting kicked around by allergies. And I will try not to bore you too much with coughing, sneezing, and choking, but it's going to be an interesting evening, to be sure. Anyway, welcome to the program. Glad you're back. As I do every week at this time, I want to remind you about Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, and they are at 208-478-HOPE. They are the antithesis of everything Planned Parenthood. In other words, they are all about life. If you can help them, please call them, 478-HOPE. You can help them financially, you can help them in many other ways, but call them and see how you can help them. Remember, it's all about life, and Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center may just be the people that are going to save a life. Maybe it'll be a life of yours, your baby, your grandchildren, somebody like that. Compassion and Hope, 478-HOPE. Well, we have a lot of ground to cover tonight. We'll try to get through everything. We may not be able to get through all of it, but we're going to try. We only have a couple. I think one more Wednesday before the elections, which are May 20th, and so we're going to talk a little bit about candidates. And I would ask that you have a pencil and paper or pen and pad handy. I'm going to give you some ideas of people you may consider to vote for. Now, as you already know, I'm not going to suggest anybody from the establishment Republicans because, quite honestly, I don't view them any different than I do the establishment Democrats. They basically are marching to the same tune. They just have the last initial, an R or a D. But in this city, the establishment Pocatello Republicans are little different, if any, from the Democrats. So those people that I speak to you about are going to be true conservatives, constitutionally conservative people who I believe will serve meaning all of Idaho's best interests. But before we get to that, let me remind you of a couple of things. First of all, I want to remind you once again about this Saturday at the Highland Golf Course, the 15th annual Marine Corps League Golf Scramble. It's a shotgun start, and check-in time is 7:45 a.m. to 8:45, so there's an hour there. The slots have been filling, so and it always seems that the last week is when everybody calls and makes their reservations. So I'm going to give you a couple of phone numbers to call, and if you're a golf fan, this Saturday should be a pretty good day. Not like the last couple of days where it's been drizzly, wet. When I came in tonight, it was kind of spritzing around. Enough that I wore a sweater. It's cooled a little bit. So here's the deal. Marine Corps League's 15th annual golf scramble. And if you haven't been to these are a lot of fun. Everybody that attends has a good time. Very reasonable. These are four-person scrambles. And boy, I'd like to get a few more women in. A couple of years ago, the women kicked everybody right in the tail. A woman had the longest drive. Some of the guys that are real golfers, regular golfers, probably were a little embarrassed by that. And we had a woman who was nearest the pin, and there are trophies for that. So anyway, there are prizes for the longest drive, closest to the pin, prizes for first, second, and third place. It's only $60 per person, and that includes green fees and lunch. It's a sack lunch. It's nothing fancy, but it'll certainly do the job. There are also going to be raffle tickets available. And for you fellows, ladies and gentlemen, who are collectors or aficionados of weapons, this year the Marine Corps League, as a fundraiser, is auctioning off an M1 Garand rifle. That's the legendary World War II and Korea weapon that the Marines and the Army used. An M1 Garand, this is field grade. In other words, in pretty good shape. It's an original. It's not a knockoff. It's the real thing. And you can buy raffle tickets for only $10 each. That is a bargain. If you get one of these, this one, for instance, is valued at around $2,000. So if you can pick this up for a $10 ticket, you're really getting not only a piece of history, but a good sports rifle, good hunting rifle. So you can get the tickets there now. To register, or if you wish to make a donation, or if you have something you'd like to see us raffle off as part of our fundraiser, please call. There are three people that you can keep in mind, so hope you have the pencil and paper handy. Stan Brangham, and you can reach Stan at 237-3607, 237-3607, or Phil Clifton at 241 241-0594. That's Phil Clifton at 241-0594. Or Ron Tapia, and Ron can be reached at 251-3364. Ron Tapia at 251-3364. That's the 15th annual Golf Scramble. It's this Saturday, so you've still got a couple days, but don't wait until the last minute, because I got the lineup as it is now, and as I said, it seems that everybody waits till the last week, and the slots are really filling. So you want to get in there as quickly as you can. All right. Vote Yes Pocatello. Now, I introduced you, I guess it is, to Vote Yes Pocatello, I think it was last week. And Vote Yes Pocatello is going to have representatives on the radio this Friday. So you might want to just make a note of this, especially if you're a Neil Larson fan. Neil Larson is on 590 AM and 92.1 FM, KID News Radio. And it's going to be at about 7:30 Friday morning. And Neil's going to have a guest from Vote Yes Pocatello. And I don't know if this is going to be a call-in or if it's just an interview, but you may want to tune in to Neil Larson's show this coming Friday at 7:30 in the morning. And then later that day, with Idaho's Afternoon News with Mark Richardson at 97.7 FM in the second hour at approximately 5:20 p.m. There will be representatives from Vote Yes Pocatello on the Mark Richardson Show on 97.7 FM, and that'll be at about 5:20 in the afternoon. So Neil Larson in the morning, Mark Richardson in the afternoon. I think you'll find it interesting. I don't know if they're call-ins or just interviews, but either way, you'll probably get some more information and bring you up to date on what's happening with Vote Yes Pocatello. And you can go to voteyespocatello.com, and in fact, I suggest you do. They update the information regularly, and you may want to see what's going on with Vote Yes Pocatello. As I said, the allergies are really getting to me, so bear with me just a moment. Thank you. Well, this is something, Josh, are we queued up on that first one? This is something that you may remember. I showed you this DVD clip a couple of months ago, I guess, and I'm going to show it to you again, and you'll understand why. This is Representative Trey Gowdy, and Trey Gowdy has been really hot on the Benghazi thing. Now, you know, we're almost at 2 years. 2 years since this travesty happened, and we're still trying to get answers out of the White House. But let me have Trey Gowdy kind of pique your interest. Let's go ahead and roll that, Josh.
Thank you, Jimmy. We will not waver in our commitment to see that justice is done for this terrible act in Benghazi. And make no mistake, justice will be done. That was the President of the United States over a year ago. We're investigating exactly what happened, but my biggest priority now is bringing those folks to justice. That was the President of the United States over a year ago. No one has been arrested. No one has been prosecuted. No one has been brought to justice. We don't even have access to the witnesses. You and the media were good enough for my 16 years as a prosecutor not to tell me how to do my job. And so far in Congress, y'all have been good enough not to tell me how to do my job. I'm not telling you how to do your job. But I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you can't answer these questions, then I'll leave you to draw whatever conclusion you want to draw about whether or not the media has provided sufficient oversight. Can you tell me why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi the night that he was killed? Do you know? Does it bother you whether or not you know why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi? Do you know why we were the last flag flying in Benghazi after the British had left and the Red Cross had been bombed? Do you know why requests for additional security were denied? Do you know why an ambassador asking for more security days and weeks before he was murdered and those requests went unheeded? Do you know the answer to why those requests went unheeded? Do you know why no assets were deployed during the siege? And I've heard the explanation, which defies logic, frankly, that we couldn't have gotten there in time. But you know, they didn't know when it was going to end. So how can you possibly cite that as an excuse? Do you know whether the president called any of our allies and said, can you help? We have men under attack. Can you answer that? Do any of you know why Susan Rice was picked? The Secretary of State did not go. She says she doesn't like Sunday talk shows. That's the only media venue she does not like, if that's true. Why was Susan Rice on the 5 Sunday talk shows? Do you know the origin of this mythology, that it was spawned as a spontaneous reaction to a video? Do you know where that started? Do you know how we got from no evidence of that to that being the official position of the administration? In conclusion, Congress is supposed to provide oversight. The voters are supposed to provide oversight. And you were supposed to provide oversight. That's why you have special liberties, and that's why you have special protections. I am not surprised that the President of the United States called this a phony scandal. I'm not surprised that Secretary Clinton asked, what difference does it make? I'm not even surprised that Jay Carney said Benghazi happened a long time ago. I'm just surprised at how many people bought it.
All right, now, keeping that in mind and freshly in your mind, let me just read this very quick and short piece from May 6th, Tuesday, yesterday's Wall Street Journal. Representative Trey Gowdy, Republican from South Carolina, will lead a special panel being created by Republicans to investigate the September 11th, 2012 attacks that killed 4 Americans in Benghazi, Libya, House Speaker John Boehner said Monday. The selection of Mr. Gowdy, a former federal prosecutor, will make him the point man in a political battle over GOP allegations that the Obama administration engaged in political maneuvering in its response to the 2012 attacks. Republicans have alleged the administration knowingly misrepresented the nature of the Benghazi attacks in order to shield itself from blame in an election year. Democrats have said Republicans are embracing conspiracy theories. White House spokesman Jay Carney said Monday that the new probe isn't legitimate oversight. Mr. Boehner, Republican from Ohio, Speaker of the House, announced plans for the special panel last week after the GOP pointed to newly released emails saying they revealed the White House was more concerned with shifting blame for the attacks than responding aggressively. That was by Michael Crittenden in yesterday's Wall Street Journal. So finally, we're starting to move on the right road toward this the travesty that and I just can't think of words strong enough to and I don't mean to sound like I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sure all of you are outraged by what happened in Benghazi, and hopefully you're as outraged as I am about the fact that the White House can get away with stonewalling for almost 2 years. We lost the ambassador to Libya, and we lost 3 good Americans. And the White House, and I've heard various stories. You've probably heard them too if you watch the news. And I admit that I watch Fox most of the time. I don't trust them 100% of the time, but I do trust them at least 90% of the time. And between that and whatever I can glean from other sources, I'm convinced that it went right to the Obamanist himself, that he knew exactly what was happening after the fact, because apparently he wasn't available. He was dallying somewhere. We don't know where. Maybe he was off on another fundraiser, as he is tonight on Your Dime and Mine. He went to Arkansas to see the devastation from tornadoes, and then he had to make a stop in Los Angeles for fundraising in Air Force One that cost over $100,000 an hour to operate, a fundraiser for himself and for his political cronies. That's the alleged president of the United States. So sorry if I seem a little angry about the Benghazi man thing. I'm sure that it outrages most everybody, and especially if you were in the military and you understand what it means to be put forward, and then to see our own government betray these fine Americans. I am so glad. And Trey Gowdy's a tough customer. He's not new at this game. I was a little surprised that Boehner had the guts to put him in there, to be honest with you. Now we'll see who else gets put in there. We'll see if he puts anybody else in there that knows how to inquire, knows how to interrogate. That's what it'll take. We've seen what the White House does. What's this woman's name from the IRS that has twice pleaded the fifth and refused to talk? Well, they finally they've held her now in contempt of Congress, and there can be repercussions now, and I hope they will be. So anyway, we're starting to make some headway. Now, one of the things that I find absolutely amazing about this whole Benghazi, this whole thing, we've been at war for 13 years with various aspects of Islam. And that's what it is. Make no bones about it. This is Islam. Islam declared war on the world actually 14 centuries ago. But about 30 years ago, what was it, 1972 was the first time we really saw Islam as in its full evil, when the Muslim, I don't know what you call them, terrorists. These are soldiers of Islam. They're terrorists to us. They consider themselves soldiers for Allah. When they murdered the Israeli athletes, that was in 1972. And I can still see vividly in my mind's eye the television broadcast as this was happening, and how horror-stricken I was that they could do this and that they would do this. I knew very little about Islam at the time. I have learned since then, as we have all of us, and we need to know more. And that gives me kind of a little segue for another piece of information about the religion of peace, going about their peaceful ways of converting the world to Islam. And of course, the word Islam means submit or submission. So they are going to make the rest of us Islam to their distorted and I can't even think of the words I want to use, their religion. All right, this is from yesterday's Wall Street Journal also. Nigerian rebels plan to sell abducted girls. Boko Haram leader says kidnapped teenage students are slaves. Foreign governments join hunt and pledge assistance. Now, I've really cut this article down. The leader of Nigeria's Boko Haram insurgency, Abu Bakr Shekau, said he would sell the girls because they are our slaves. On the night of April 14th, Boko Haram fighters dressed as soldiers drove trucks into the school and abducted the girls. The sect has long argued that government schools are corrupting Nigerians, turning them away from Islam. Boko Haram means Western education is sin in the Hausa language. Education is sin. It is forbidden, Mr. Shekau said. Women must go and marry. At least 223 of the teenage girls remain missing. And since this article came out, there have been at least another 8 girls were abducted. So now this was, this surprised me that the Idaho State Journal would actually have such an in-depth look at this travesty that we're talking about. But here's some of what they had in the forum section yesterday in the Idaho State Journal. Those who have followed the April 14th kidnapping of 276 girls from a school in Nigeria are appalled. A terrorist group with ties to Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, is responsible for raiding a school in northwest Nigeria in the middle of the night and abducting the children. Now think for a moment. Suppose in the middle of the night, your home or let's say you had your children in a live-in school, a prep school or something, and in the middle of the night, these madmen came in and abducted your children, your daughters, and took them as slaves to be sold, to be used, some of them being forced into marriage with their warriors. Think for a moment. Now these people are 10,000 miles away in Nigeria. They don't have the means to resist that we do. And these animals have taken these children as slaves. Now the leader of Boko Haram has released a video claiming the girls will be sold. Quoting, "I abducted your girls. I will sell them in the market by Allah," a man claiming to be Boko Haram leader Abu Bakr Shekau said in the video. "There is a market for selling humans. Allah says I should sell." That's some Allah they have there. "He commands me to sell. I will sell women. I sell women." That's a quote. Armed soldiers of Boko Haram overwhelmed security guards at the school last month, pulled the girls out of bed and forced them into trucks that disappeared into the jungle. About 53 of the girls have escaped and been reunited with their families, but most remain prisoners. And it goes on to talk a little bit about the schools and the poverty of the families there. Boko Haram, the group's name actually translates to Western education is sin. Remember, I'm getting this from the Idaho State Journal. So once in a while, even if it's only accidental, they do some legitimate reporting. Going further, Boko Haram has carried out numerous attacks and killed thousands of people at schools, churches, police stations, and government buildings over the past several years. Targets have included Christians, only because they are Christians. When was the last time you heard of any Christian groups attacking a mosque and murdering everybody in the mosque? Probably been a while. Oh, and please don't tell me about what happened in 1743. I'm not interested in that. I live in the 21st century. We're supposed to be a civilized world today. So, it's kind of like, what have you done lately? Well, it's what the religion of peace does every day. They target anybody who will not, Islam, who will not submit. A recent report from the National Colloquium on Shelter and Services for Domestic Minor Sex Trafficking Victims determined that human trafficking is a $9.8 billion industry in the United States. At least 100,000 children are being used as prostitutes in America each year, according to a report from Shared Hope International. There's more to the article, and I applaud the Idaho State Journal for having spoken about this. I don't know how they determine at least 100,000 children are being used as prostitutes in America each year. I know that there has been, I don't know the size of it, I don't know if this is accurate or not, there has been in the past a very big market in some big cities, for instance, Los Angeles, with the influx of illegal aliens. Many, not usually children, but many young women have in the past been abducted and forced into slavery. I have dealt with at least 2 rescues in situations like that, and I know firsthand how that is. And in the Asian communities here again in Los Angeles, since that's my only experience personally, in the Korean community and the Vietnamese community, there were problems, and it was very difficult to infiltrate those communities because you have to be Korean or Vietnamese, and a guy like me isn't going to be able to get into those communities and do very in-depth investigations. So it is very difficult to investigate those things. There are a lot of children, there are young women who are, for lack of a better term, sold into slavery or prostitution. I've seen it firsthand, and it's been a while, but I know that it happens. 100,000 a year, I'm not sure those figures are accurate, but they may be. All right, one other article on the religion of peace. I thought this was interesting, and this was by a fellow named Saeed Shah, Lillig, Pakistan. 8 months ago, 11-year-old Amna was married off to a man 3 times her age to settle a crime her uncle had committed. The uncle had raped another girl in the village, according to tribal elders. Following tribal custom prevalent in highly conservative parts of Pakistan, conservative meaning Islam, the elders gave Amna and her 17-year-old cousin Zulha to that girl's family. Nobody asked their opinion. The Grilagan girls from a remote corner of northwest Pakistan were both married to the brother of the raped girl, who was in his mid-30s. Within Pashto tribal culture and under Islamic law, men can marry multiple wives. The younger girl, Amna, has been allowed to stay at her father's house until she reaches puberty, a rare concession to her young age. And if you have studied Islam at all, you will remember that the Prophet Muhammad, as he is titled by Islam, married his last wife when she was 6, but good man that he was, he waited till she was 9 to consummate that marriage. So an interesting religion, to be sure. All right, so that took us a little bit off the path where I wanted to go, but we've got elections coming up, and I wanted to talk to you about some candidates that I think I ask you to take a further look at them. And before we do that, why is it important, and I know this is a rhetorical question, but why is it important that we carefully select those whom we elect to office? Well, all you have to do is look. Let me give you a little bit of an idea of why it's important to select carefully those whom we elect to public office. This stack here is only a portion of the stack of mailers that I've been receiving, and I'm sure you've received This is only a portion. I was throwing them away for a while. Then I thought it might be interesting to keep them, just to see how they go. There's a lot of money being thrown, a lot of mud being thrown in the second district, congressional district right now for that election between the current seat holder, Mike Simpson, who's been in the House now for 16 years. He has a very powerful position and he plans to keep it. And the establishment Republicans plan to keep him there at all costs. And so he has been slinging mud. And I don't know, this is the first really ugly campaign I've seen in the 8 years I've lived in this state. I saw a lot of them in California and they're always disgusting. But it just is so out of sync with the way we think here in Idaho. And to see the depths to which Mike Simpson and his cronies will stoop to try to keep him in his position of power. The latest outrage for me, and I don't know if you've gotten one of these, I'm sure everybody got one, came as a plain brown wrapper, it's an envelope kind of thing. It's supposed to resemble an envelope. It says, final notice, past due, past due. Now, the mailman knows that I'm not a deadbeat, and this is not a past due notice coming to me. But I have to tell you, when I just glanced at it in the mail box, I thought, past due? What do I have past due? And then I opened this disgrace that is flying under the banner of being a political campaign letter from the Mike Simpson campaign. And of course, it's another mudslinging contest or fest at the expense of Brian Smith, an honorable man who I feel would serve us much better in Congress because he's not a careerist, he's not a career politician, and he's just, in my opinion, more honest than Mike Simpson. Mike Simpson, I have to, full disclosure, I supported him not too many years ago. I really thought he was the real deal. I have seen who Mike Simpson is, and it's kind of like going to the mountain. It ain't what I expected, and I'm very, very disappointed. Being a lifelong Republican and being a very conservative Republican, I perhaps have higher expectations for my representatives. Mike Simpson is a terrible disappointment. But more than that, this trash that he's been putting out is beneath the dignity of any politician, Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. It's trash. And it's interesting to see who's paying for it. He's paying for some of it. A big dental pack is paying for some of it. The Better Business Bureau, who has not always been friendly toward better business, in spite of, they are friendly toward aggrandizing power. They are not necessarily friendly toward business as you might expect them to be. But a lot of the money that's being spent on the Simpson campaign is not coming from him. And it's just trash. So let's go to the list. And let me just share a couple names here with you that I would suggest you take a look at these folks. Now, if you haven't done so already, I would urge you to go to youtube.com/idavote. That's www, of course, World Wide Web, youtube.com/idavote. And there you will see information on Brian Smith, who is running for Congress, Senator Russ Fulcher, who is running for to be governor of our state, Lawrence Denny, who is running for Secretary of State, Jim Schmelik, who is running for Lieutenant Governor, C.T. Chris Troupas, running for Attorney General, John Einon, E-Y-N-O-N, running for Superintendent of Public Education, Todd Hatfield, running for State Controller, Lance Earl, running for State Representative Seat B, and that's against Kelly Packer. And I got my first piece of mail from Kelly Packer's group, whatever it is today, and it was paid for by Idaho Association of Realtors, PAC. First thing they do when they go to Boise is they get themselves some PACs, get themselves some sponsors, prepare for the next election. So she has the Idaho Association of Realtors behind her. I'm surprised that we haven't had anything from the insurance industry because she's in up to her hips with the insurance industry. But maybe we will be getting some of that. And I find it interesting because on the back she says, Kelly Packer's conservative principles at work. Well, let's see, conservative principles for Kelly Packer amounts to, on the Idaho Freedom Index for 2014, she is at minus 61 on the index. In other words, she votes with the Democrats almost all of the time. And she doesn't vote with the Republicans on most things, on a few things, safe things like gun rights. Oh, she'll be there with the Republicans on that. That's safe. But she was only a little bit ahead Democrat Carolyn Moline. Elaine Smith was second from the bottom. I mean, she really has a minus 88. But Kelly Packer had a minus 61. This is not a conservative voting record. However, she says she's for balanced budgets. She's for defending the freedoms of all Idahoans. And yeah, she showed that especially with her support of the LGBT agenda when she voted with 2 Democrats to return to committee the bill that Representative Luker or Senator Luker had put forward on protections for the community against the LGBT juggernaut of making everybody live under their thumb. He eventually pulled House Bill, he's House Representative. House Bill 427 and 426 was the companion bill. There were 3 people who voted against the bill, Kelly Packer and 2 Democrats. So, standing up to Washington, D.C., well, she stood up to Washington, D.C. to help get in the insurance exchange. All that did was give Obama has said it doesn't matter whether your state has an insurance exchange or whether we do it. It's going to get done, and it is federal money. You will accept the consequences. And so Kelly Packer, in her infinite wisdom with a number of others, decided that we had to have the insurance exchange, and allegedly that was so that we could control the issue. We have no control of the issue. It's federal money. They control it. And under that PAC, or under that federal money, that means that abortion on demand basically will continue to be there, whether it's standard abortion, chemical abortion, doesn't matter. They will be aborting children on our dime. So I don't see where she's standing up for us on that issue. She certainly didn't stand forward on the LGBT thing, at least not in the mainstream on that. She is very popular with the LGBT. As a matter of fact, Nicole Lefevre, the senator who's been leading this travesty, this circus in Boise with add the words, they want to force us to accept marriage, quote unquote, among the homosexual community, same gender marriage. Lefevre and her group like her so much that Lefevre, after the discussion and all that stuff on AB 426, 427, Lefevre got hold of her LGBT pals and said, to thank Kelly for supporting us, send her flowers and candy. And I'm sure she got plenty. That we were watching the internet exchanges back and forth as people were saying, oh, I found the perfect flowers. I got the great candy. I sent her both. So Kelly Packer, and then putting more Idahoans to work. Well, yeah, she may put some more to work taking care of the insurance exchange. I don't know what other plans she had. Now, Lance Earl is running against her. I've had Lance as a guest on the program a couple of times. Let me just read you the bullet points on Lance Earl. If you watch the program, you know this. He says, endowment land for education, not political cronyism. Local solutions for health care and the repeal of Obamacare. Of course, she's not talking about a repeal. Parental and educator control of our education system. State management of our lands and resources. Remember, the federal government controls 62% of our state. An end to government-funded abortion and an end to abortion on demand. And of course, those are both embedded in the Obamacare, whether we regulate it under a so-called exchange or they do. And the sanctity of the traditional family unit and the importance of the family in strengthening our nation. Excuse me, please. In spite of the rhetoric coming out of the Packer clan, the proof is in the pudding, and her pudding has been pretty weak. Okay, so let's go a little bit down. Okay, so and now that's a little closer to home because that's Lance Earl is running for state representative in 28B. D.H. Spencer, Dennis H. Spencer, and you've seen Dennis on my program, and the H is for his uncle who died on the USS Arizona. He's very proud of the association with his uncle, and of course that touches me with my love of the Navy and Marine Corps. Dennis has, he said, I have the courage to say no and to act in the interest of the taxpayer. He's a former commissioner from Bear Lake County, so he's not a novice. Openness, communication, and accountability. And if you saw Dennis when I interviewed him, he's kind of an easygoing, laid-back guy. It's easy to think that he is just avuncular, but he's not. He thinks, and he is very, very in tune with constitutional and conservative principles of government. I will bring more transparency to the office, and I'll be honest with you, I can't think of too many people that would be as transparent in the way he does business as would Dennis Spencer. He is experienced, he's dedicated, and he will help to promote business in the area. Now he's running against Hadley he's running against Hadley, Steve Hadley. Steve Hadley's been there long enough. There's an interesting thing that's going on within the commission now. This is all made up, the 3 Republicans. Personally, I think the commission should be no fewer than 5. 3 is not enough. It's too easy to get together and have discussions on things and say that it was business. Not that I'm casting aspersions, I'm just saying it's too easy. However, there's a real beef going on within the commission. The Hadley camp wants to do away with Anderson. Manwaring is standing back and watching the show, I guess. I'm not really sure what's happened. He's had surgery and he's been kind of off his pins for a while, and I guess he's been pretty ill. Anderson has been pretty ill for a long time. So Hadley is, I guess he declared war on Anderson. I'm not really sure what's happening there. They were bosom buddies 4 years ago or 6 years ago when they campaigned. And apparently that family feud has gone to parting of the sheets. I'm not really sure. Interesting now, Jeff Greenwell is also running. He's running against Anderson, I believe. Greenwell is cousin to Hadley. Now, wouldn't it be interesting if Greenwell and Hadley were both on the commission, related by blood? Very interesting. Is that the kind of relationship we want to see in something as small as the county commissioners, where there are only 3 of them, 2 of them related? I don't think it's a good idea. So I'm certainly not going to advocate for either Hadley or Greenwell. I like Jeff. Jeff is a registered nurse. He's a veteran. We are brothers in that respect. And he's kind of a good old boy, and he's nobody's fool. But I have a real problem with having people related by blood in the same office when it's that small. Here again, I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just making an observation. And then the 2 more. Robert Ballard is running again for county clerk. Now, you remember about 4 years ago, Ballard missed being elected by, I think it was 4/10 or 4/100, something like that. It was a very narrow margin. It was less than 1%. And that was with what I believe was a rigged election. And I believe that. We have tried to bring that to the attention of the Attorney General. They weren't interested. Tried to bring it to the Secretary of State. Not interested. Certainly the locals weren't interested because it was their party. But Robert Ballard, now let me just give you a little, in case you don't know. Robert Ballard is, he has college degrees in history, accounting, and business administration. Those are pretty important background things to have as the county clerk, one of the most important offices in the county. Forget about the sheriff, forget about the commissioners. Think about the county clerk. That's the guy who controls the elections. And right now those elections seem to be mismanaged, would be a good way of saying it. He has 35 years experience in accounting and auditing, budgeting, cash management, and finance. He has experience in personnel and purchasing. He will put in a 40-hour week, unlike Brother Hatch, who had just left there, who, if he showed up for 4 hours, we were pretty lucky. He promises that he will finish his term as clerk, not step down so somebody can be appointed to get him ready for the next office. He will screen any future hires for any criminal record. And in light of what happened a couple months ago with Tory, never can recall Tory's last name, who was removed from the elections office, and now I understand she's gone to work in Bingham County in their elections office. I'm not sure how that works, because she, as I understand it, she pleaded guilty to the shoplift charge, and I haven't, that thing just got hushed up very quickly. She was taken out of the elections office, put into the indigent care office, so she kept her job, probably kept the same income. And I just learned earlier this week that she's now is working in Bingham County in their elections office. I'm not sure of the accuracy of that, but it wouldn't surprise me. The way things are done in Bannock County, that wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, Ballard does not plan to use the county clerk's office as a stepping stone, as so many people like to do, especially in the established Republicans. They always have a stepping stone to the next great office. And he will treat every county dollar as if it were his own. Now, who's his major opposition? Well, there's the man that's in there now. Most of us know very little about him. All I know is what I saw in the paper. Seems like a nice guy. I don't know. He's brand new there. The only other person running for that office, certainly in the Republicans, is Dave Bowen. Well, who is Dave Bowen? I decided to go look at his website and see who he is. Dave Bowen, according to his website, is a nice guy. That's it. He's been a career Mason. He's been an independent businessman in that respect. And he went to college. I don't know if he graduated from college. Went to college in, where do you say, Rexburg, was it? I forget where it is. Excuse me. He says, I attended Ricks College, where he met his wife Cindy. So I don't know what he studied. I don't know if he graduated. We don't know. But you can go to Bowen's site, and you'll see a whole lot of anecdotal stuff about what a nice guy he is, but you really won't see anything that qualifies him to be the county clerk. A nice guy is fine. Hatch was a nice guy, as he said when he was running for office, if you want to call it that. His dog likes him. Did that make him qualified to be the county clerk? No. Is the fact that Dave Bowen is supposed to be a nice guy, does that make him qualified to be the county clerk? No. Makes him qualified to be a nice guy. Robert Ballard is eminently qualified to be county clerk, and so I would suggest you take a good look at him, and I would suggest you vote for him. And last but not least, I want to mention this to you because this is very important. It's a write-in, and write-ins are so difficult because when somebody goes to write-in, they start off right out of the starting blocks playing catch-up. Tom Castellamides. Now, you know the name Castellamides. His family has been here since the 1800s. Tom's family have run sheep here. They have agricultural properties here. Tom is a bar certified attorney. He's passed the bar here. In fact, he's bar certified in 3 or 4 states. Very sharp guy. And Tom is a businessman, and he went to college in Utah. I'm going to get more information for you about him. I just walked off with this, and I realized I had left the thing behind, but Tom Castellamides, now you know the name Castellamides, and it's a write-in. Now what has happened is the establishment Republicans decided that they don't want Castellamides in there, and so they were able to go to a fellow in town, Kent Howard. He's a doctor, I think he's a podiatrist, I'm not really sure. Kent Howard, I don't know the man. I'm sure he's a professional, I'm sure he's a good guy. At the last minute, they decided to put him in as a write-in to try to make sure that Castellamides does not get elected. And I'm told that Kent Howard has name recognition, that he's well known within the LDS community and other places. So I don't know the man. Don't know anything about him. I'm not trying to bum rap him. I'm just saying that don't know anything about him, but I know that he's associated with the old guard or the establishment Republicans, and automatically my antenna go up. Nice guy or not? And I'm sure he's a nice guy. I don't know. But anyway, he has been stiffed in to run against Castellamides to keep Castellamides out, which will result in one of 2 things. Roy Lacey will get reelected, if that's what you want, or maybe this fellow Kent Howard will get elected. I don't know. But it will probably, unless you are on the ball and you write in, and don't worry if you can't spell Castellamides. It's actually very easy. It's Castel, K-A-S-T-I-L-O, Medes, M-E-T-E-S, Castellamides. But the name is unusual enough but well known enough that you can remember that. And that is for Senate seat, District 29 Senate seat, Tom Castellamides running as a write-in. So be sure you write him in. Those are down and dirty. Those are the folks that I'm advising you to take a look at. Brian Smith for District 2, Congressional District 2, Senator Russ Fulcher for Governor, Representative Lawrence Denny for Secretary of State, Jim Schmelik for Lieutenant Governor, C.T. Chris Troupis for Attorney General. And C.T. Troupis, he's a pretty sharp guy. He has actually pled before the Supreme Court on a couple of times. He knows his beans. He would be an outstanding Attorney General. We couldn't do any worse, and we could do a lot better. So keep that Troupis, an unusual name, Troupis. Shouldn't have any trouble finding it. John Einon is a professional educator, and he's going to be, we're hoping that he gets elected to be Superintendent of Public Education. Todd Hatfield for State Controller. Todd has some very good ideas about how to protect our investments and how to keep the government from competing with the private sector, which is happening in Boise right now. And it is a shame that our government is competing with the private sector when we are having so many problems with getting businesses and jobs. Todd Hatfield for State Controller. And then, as I've said, Lance Earl for Senate Representative, or State Representative, seat 28B. D.H. Spencer for County Commissioner, Robert Ballard for County Clerk, and Tom Castellamides for District 29 State Senator. All right, we have time for a few letters to the editor, and because we are short on remaining time, I'm going to share. Oh, I got to share this with you. Remember last week and I believe the week before, I told you about Fair Pocatello. Fair Pocatello are the people, they're the LGBT folks. Their attorney is James Ruchty, well-known, powerful attorney in the town here. He's been a state legislator. Everybody knows him. He's got a lot of pull. And Brenda Stanley, who used to be Brenda Baumgartner, and she's the face of the Fair Pocatello. And I found it interesting that the Fair folks, to use a description, well, have you had any of these robocalls yet? And very interesting, these calls that are going about. Have you wondered where these robocalls are coming from? They're either asking your party affiliation or they're asking you something to do with LGBT or Fair or something like that. Well, besides the out-of-state area codes that are showing up on caller IDs in Pocatello, there's evidence that the ACLU Idaho add the words and even Flag, P-F-L-A-G-G, of Coeur d'Alene are conducting phone banks for the Fair Pocatello, the LGBT people. If you get a call tonight, Thursday or Friday night, there's a good chance it's coming from Flag at the Planned Parenthood in Spokane, Washington. Remember I told you Planned Parenthood is up to their hips in the homosexual, the LGBT thing too. Now Flag stands for Parents, Family, Friends of Lesbians and Gays. So this is obviously a dedicated group. This came from the Facebook page of Flag in Coeur d'Alene. And I'm just quoting it. "Hey, Flaggers, I spent most of the day outside with my ducklings, but we do have some updates." I don't know what that means. Sheetha Alaskar has asked me to plead for your participation in a phone bank being held at the Spokane Planned Parenthood to stop the repeal of Pocatello's anti-discrimination ordinance. The date is May 8th, that's tomorrow, and it will be from 4:30 to around 7 p.m. So if you get a call, remember this is coming from out of our state, from Spokane, Washington's Planned Parenthood. For more information on the real danger of this important law, you can look up Fair Pocatello and see what they have to say. I would suggest you look up voteyespocatello.com and see what they have to say. I think you'll see there's some contrast there. But just in case you didn't think that they are pulling out all the stops, this is just one battle. May 20th, depending on which ways it goes. If the vote no people succeed, then you and I are going to be in jeopardy until we are able to get rid of that onerous law, when we don't knuckle under to what they want us to knuckle under to. Now, there was something that happened the other night, or the other day, and I need to bring this up, even though it's out of order in my stuff here. Mayor Blad appeared at the Take Back the Night event on, May the 3rd, I guess it was, Saturday, May the 3rd. And he was quoted in the newspaper as saying that, the quote says, "The city council worked hard in the ordinance and I signed it." Blad said, "The ordinance is there for the protection of all people. I would urge you to get out there and support the ordinance." A lot of people were rather surprised by that. They couldn't believe that Blad, who had vetoed this, or he had been the deciding vote when it came to a council hearing, he had opposed it. A lot of people were rather surprised that he was now supposedly supporting it. Well, it turns out that Mayor Blad was misquoted. And there have been so many people going to him and saying, "What are you doing? What happened? We thought you didn't like this ordinance or that it was a bad idea." And he's saying, "Well, I was misquoted." So according to Mayor Blad, he has contacted Jimmy Hancock, who wrote the article. Jimmy's usually pretty fair. Once in a while he leans a little bit, but not heavily. He's not a Mike O'Donnell. He's not a Hackworth or one of those guys. But he has his opinions, and once in a while they show through a little bit. But this was a surprise to everybody. So Mayor Blad called him and said, "Jimmy, what are you doing? You know I didn't say that." And I'm paraphrasing, and I'm going by the conversation. He said, "Well, sure you did." And he said, "No, I didn't." He said, "Well, it's in my notes." He said, "Jimmy, go back and look at your notes." And while they were on the phone, Jimmy went back and looked at it, came back on, and he said, "You're right. You didn't say that. I apologize. I misquoted you. I drew a line and I didn't in his notes, and he didn't complete it." Mayor Blad, I'm told, has asked the paper for a retraction. Fat chance. This paper hasn't the ethics to do a retraction when they're wrong or otherwise. We're hoping to see it. We would love to see this newspaper get some ethical standards. So far, it hasn't happened, and they've done some pretty radical things. But just so that you know, well, there were some comments. Now, as you know, the Idaho State Journal has a blog site. When they publish an article, usually it goes on their site the night before it goes in the newspaper. Sometimes they don't go to the newspaper, but usually they do. And if it's going to be in the next paper, the next day's paper, it's on the blog site. A lot of people go to that blog site, and they can make comments. And so here are some of the comments that were made on here. This comment says, "I'm the guy that met you shortly after you moved here. I did your carpets. We had a good conversation. Since you represent the paper in some articles, I've noticed the paper to be very one-sided with attacking anyone standing up for their personal freedom of speech." Now he's addressing the newspaper, this fellow is, as if they want to be hateful. "Why can we not have true equality without laws forcing people? Let me give you a real example that applies even to the LGBT ordinance. If a Catholic hospital did not want to do abortions because it is against their religious beliefs and the doctors and nurses that work there, if there were other doctors and nurses that were willing to do the abortions, the golden question, should the Catholics be forced to do the abortions? With the threat that if they did not, there would be jail time and possibly a fine, which is what our ordinance does. If you refuse service or hospitality or whatever to somebody who's LGBT and only makes an accusation, in the long run you could go to jail. It is a criminal offense. And we're the only, of the 7 cities in this state that have an ordinance, ours is the only one that attaches criminal penalties to it. Going on, most of us would say no. It is against their religious beliefs, their personal conscience, their freedom to say no. This ordinance is trying to take away people's right to say no, their religious beliefs, freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, thus the freedom of speech. The press claims to be the vanguard of protecting freedom of speech, yet they are advocating taking away other people's freedom of speech. Just remember, should the Catholics be forced to lose their freedom of speech about abortions? I say no. Their speech should be protected. That is freedom. May you stand up for freedom of speech, even if Mike O'Donnell doesn't believe in it for everyone. I believe Mayor Blad did not take a stand as stated in the article. I know him, and I meet with him relatively frequently on a number of issues. I will check with him. Did Ian or Mike guide this article? Who are those putting on the pressure to misquote?" And this was the parent of a newspaper carrier. I don't know who else that is. Here's another blog response. "Something is not right with this article. Got to question the validity of the quotes in the speech given by Mayor Blad. Not only that, if wrong, with the facts. There wasn't any amendment to an existing ordinance. That's one of the things that was quoted. This ordinance has never had any amendments. There never was an ordinance for non-discrimination prior to the one passed last June. There's no ordinance for anyone else, just the LGBT. Anyone else trying to file a report with the police for discrimination will be turned away or have their report rejected. It's not in the city laws, so it's not in their jurisdiction. Real fair, huh?" And that's Firefly. And then another one from Firefly. "Where's the retraction, Idaho State Journal? It had better be a large retraction printed on the front page of the Tuesday paper, or your ethical standards are even lower than we all thought. And then it should be printed every day for the next week on the front page. This paper has a deplorable history of twisting people's words and or misquoting them for the sole purpose of advancing a personal view or opinion. Subscribers, we all need to hold the ISJ accountable. Mayor, don't let them get away with it. Call news media outlets, write a letter to the editor, and submit it to the ISJ and the Post-Register. We'll never get honest, balanced, ethical firefighting or reporting if we continue to ignore the problem." And then note, now my wife had a personal conversation with Mayor Blad, and she posted a comment, and basically her comment is, "Another fabricated story by the ISJ. Mayor Blad was not interviewed by the ISJ and never made the comments attributed to him. How about a prominent retraction? Mayor Blad made it clear to all present at the blessing of the bikes on Sunday that this article is pure fabrication. How about showing some integrity?" All right. So subsequent to that, my wife had a conversation with Mayor Blad, and he stated that Jimmy Hancock apologized for the mistake, that when he checked his notes, it became clear to him that Mayor Blad had not said what was quoted. In other words, he was not supporting the LGBT non-discrimination ordinance. The only correct statement was that a yes vote was to overturn the ordinance and a no vote was to keep the ordinance. So once again, something to do with the ISJ, mustard hits the propeller. I think I have just enough time let's see. Boy, there's so much on this, and we're having a hard time keeping up with it because it just keeps going and going and going. I may have just enough time to read this. It's a little lengthy, but I think it is elegant and eloquent at the same time. Why I believe the fair proposition must be repealed. Anti-discrimination ordinances, regardless of what group they support, have very serious, unexpected consequences. As a victim of these consequences, I have to support the move to repeal the fair proposition. The problem with anti-discrimination ordinances is that they encourage he said, she said situations in which all the power is in the hands of the protected minority. Although, since the founding of our country, people have been presumed innocent and guilt must be proven, with non-discrimination ordinance, you must prove your innocence. How do you prove you've not discriminated against a specific person? If you are a landlord who is accused of discrimination against, for example, a single mother with a toddler, the situation that resulted in the psychological destruction of my husband and the dissolution of my marriage, you must be able to show with careful documentation all the callers and all the people to whom you spoke about the property, both those who came to view it and those who did not. Not only do you need the names and dates of the calls, but you need to document their status, their race, and their sexual orientation if you can find out, without offending them, what they said and what you said. You also need detailed records of other aspects of management of your business that might be called into question, aspects you probably never thought of. However, without this nebulous information, you could be in trouble. My husband was harassed by a fair housing agency associated with Acorn for 6 years because of the political goals of an unscrupulous attorney general. A woman who admitted she had never come to view any of his apartments said that he had refused to rent her an upstairs apartment because she had a small child, although at the time in question he had no available upstairs units. She claimed to be running from an abusive husband and to need a safe, such as upstairs, apartment immediately. He only had one unit on the ground floor available for rent at that date. There was a kernel of truth to her charge that he discriminated against families with children. All the apartments in the complexes had balconies, and for safety reasons, he preferred to rent lower-level units to families with small children, although he had placed families with children upstairs, and he didn't move upstairs tenants who gave birth while living in the complex. According to the judge in his case, because of the anti-discrimination ordinance, he was required to rent an upstairs apartment to a family with children if the family wished. At the same time, the judge told him if a child fell from a balcony and was injured or killed, my husband personally would have been considered negligent under the law for putting the child into an unsafe situation. There's more to this, and it's enough more that I'm going to continue this next week because it needs to be, you need to hear the whole thing. But basically, this woman, this was a very courageous act for this woman to write this article to the Idaho State Journal, mainly because of the people with whom she associates. She is a member of Temple Emmanuel. She's a lovely lady, a very nice lady, a good person, and I suspect that she is going to be unfavorably treated by some people that may disagree with her. I don't know that. At any rate, thank you so much for viewing. I wish we had more time. There's so much to discuss. God bless you. Have a good, safe week. Please join us next Wednesday. It'll be our last time before the election. Have a good, safe week. God bless you and yours. Good night.